The millionaire discovers the black woman beggar on the street is his late wife's twin sister. Richard Lane walked the bustling streets of New York City, but today felt different. The sun slanted through skyscrapers, creating a kaleidoscope of light that danced over the crowds. Yet his world felt dim, a dismal gray that stood in sharp contrast to the vibrant life around him. Just a year ago, he would have been smiling, surrounded by friends, sipping champagne at a gala. But all the wealth in his bank account couldn't fill the void left by Anna's abrupt departure. Lost in his thoughts, Richard wandered aimlessly until he found himself on a side street. There she was, a woman curled up on the pavement beneath a tattered blanket, her face dirty but hauntingly familiar. His heart tightened. The resemblance was uncanny. The strong cheekbones, the full lips, the wild curly hair, everything reminded him of Anna. But this woman was not the radiant wife he had loved. She was a shadow. But Richard couldn't move. He felt a magnetic pull, a connection that was deeper than mere looks. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes as they locked onto his. They were stormy, full of life, yet tinged with sadness, an echo of his own. "Please, sir, spare some change." Her voice pulled him from his reverie, but his mind was racing. How could someone so dirty and worn carry the essence of his wife? Instinctively, he reached into his pocket and pressed $100 bill into her palm. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Clara," she replied, her brow furrowing, as if she was searching for something within him. Richard couldn't shake the feeling that fate had led him to her. For days after their encounter, thoughts of Clara haunted him. Curiosity morphed into determination. He had to learn more. Who was she? What had brought her to this life? As the days turned into weeks, Richard faced another storm brewing on the horizon. A former business partner, Jack, motivated by resentment and revenge, had been silently organizing an attack on his empire. Whispers of bad investments and accusations of fraud began to swirl. Richard felt the pressure. The two forces were closing in on him. One was the mystery of Clara, and the other, the threat of Jack's vendetta. Driven by a mix of desperation and hope, Richard decided he needed to unearth Clara's past. Was she truly Anna's long-lost twin sister? The revelation could reshape everything he thought he knew about family. But with every new detail he uncovered, the line between past and present blurred. Yet, just as Richard felt he was finally grasping something real, a chilling secret bubbled to the surface, one that could destroy everything. Could Clara truly be who or was this a cruel trick of fate? Standing amidst the chaos, he took a deep breath, realizing he was at the edge of a revelation that could change everything. What threads would he have to unravel, and how deep did the deception go? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without prior notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you are still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching this? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Richard stood there, breathless, at the edge of a life-altering revelation. What if Clara was indeed Anna's sister? It felt like destiny, but also like a fragile mirage ready to shatter. He couldn't shake the weight of his thoughts as he stared into Clara's stormy eyes, hope and dread swirling in a dizzying dance. "Clara," he whispered, trembling. Her gaze flickered, something unnameable shifting behind her tired expression. Suddenly, A low rumble split the air, a cacophony that jolted Richard from his thoughts. A distant siren wailed, growing louder. An ominous harbinger that made crowds snap to attention. Clara's face hardened, a shadow of fear crossing her features. "Stay here," Richard commanded, though he himself felt the pull of danger screaming inside him. He stepped back, scanning the street, heart hammering in his chest. The sirens blared closer, the rattle of police cars weaving through the streets, a flurry of red and blue lights reflecting off the glass buildings. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the bustling city, drawing gasps from. People began to scatter, urgency pulling them away from the scene. He turned back to Clara. Her eyes widened, fear etched deep in her gaze. She wasn't just afraid. She looked hunted. "Clara, what's wrong?" he asked, urgency gripping his voice. But before she could respond, a tall figure emerged from the chaos. A man, clad in all black, his face partially obscured. Richard's heart sank, recognizing the unmistakable silhouette. Jack. Rage crackled in the air, mingling with Richard's rising dread. Richard stepped forward, fists clenching. "You!" he shouted, every ounce of fury boiling over. Jack turned, a cold smirk on his lips, scanning the panicked crowd before settling on Richard. "Ah, Rich. Didn't know you'd be playing hero tonight," he sneered, voice dripping with malice. "But you're too late." He gestured toward Clara, whose face drained of color. In a heartbeat, Richard felt the world blur. Jack lunged toward Clara, but before he could reach her, a gunshot rang out, a deafening thud that silenced the street. Time froze. Richard's vision tunneled. Clara's eyes widened, shock ripping through her. "Clara!" His voice erupted, but it wasn't her name that came forth first. Jack staggered back, the gun slipping from his fingers, a dark stain spreading across his chest. The crowd gasped collectively, whispers of horror rippling through the sea of panic. Richard's heart raced, fear mingling with confusion. The chaos enveloped them like a dark cloud. "Who shot Jack? Why?" Clara's expression shifted, something flickering in her eyes, a mix of recognition and terror. As Jack hit the pavement, Richard rushed to Clara's side, the chaos swirling around them. "What is happening? Who shot him?" he panted, breathless. "I don't know," she stammered, but there was something in her voice, something that suggested she did. Then the truth hit him, with a force so powerful it knocked the breath from his lungs. The way her gaze darted, the tightness around her mouth. "Clara, you know something," he urged, vulnerability bleeding into his words. But before she could answer, more sirens screamed into the night, the weight of the moment crashing over him. Then came the bombshell. A blonde woman rushed through the crowd, and Richard's heart dropped. It was Anna, alive, pulse racing, eyes wild. "Richard, get away from her!" His mind spun. Everything he thought he knew tilted on its axis. Clara was chasing a secret. Anna was back from the dead, shadows of a twisted fate weaving deeper. He felt the ground shift beneath him. "Richard, listen to me," Anna cried, her voice breaking through the chaos. But the truth hung heavy as the world collapsed around them. Secrets stirred, questions mounted. What threads would he have to unravel now, and who could he trust? Richard felt time fracture into shards as Anna's voice cut through the chaos. His heart raced. Everything he thought he knew teetered on the edge. "Richard, get away from her!" Anna shouted again, her eyes wild, pleading. And just like that, everything shifted. Richard's hand tightened around Clara's as the crowd surged around them, panicking. He looked at Anna, almost in a daze. "What do you mean? Clara could be your sister." But as he spoke, doubt crept in. Why was Anna here? Why were her eyes filled with terror, not joy? "Please, just trust me," Anna urged, stepping closer, her breath shaky. "Clara, she's not who you think she is." The words hit Richard like a slap. Clara, his lifeline, suddenly felt like a stranger. The crowd surged again, police sirens blaring, and chaos enveloped them. Richard's heart thumped in his chest. He glanced between the two women, searching for answers in their eyes, but only found shadows of a truth he couldn't grasp. Before he could process anything, he noticed Jack's body lying still on the pavement. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and ominous. Richard's stomach churned. This wasn't just another day in New York. This was a nightmare unfolding before him. "Clara, what do you know?" he asked, shocks coursing through his veins. But instead of responding, Clara's face contorted. "Richard, she started. But before she could finish, her body jolted. A second gunshot rang out, echoing through the air. Richard's world slowed. People screamed, and the crowd turned into a frenzy. Clara gasped, eyes wide. The moment shattered. Richard jerked, searching for the source of the shot. The man who had fired it stepped forward. Another figure from Richard's past. Someone he knew well. It was Michael, a friend turned foe. Why was he here? "Drop her!" Michael shouted, his gun trained on the three of them. "Michael, wait! What's going on?" Richard's voice cracked, desperation spilling out. "I've seen enough. The whole world has." His voice trembled, filled with rage. "You can't keep hiding the truth." Confusion clouded Richard's mind. He glanced at Anna, who stood frozen, her face pale. What truth? Suddenly, Clara's expression shifted, a storm brewing in her eyes. "You don't understand, Richard. I'm not just Anna's sister, But before she could finish, Michael cut in. "Shut up, Clara. You don't get to play innocent. You were part of this, part of everything." The weight of those words felt like a punch. Richard looked between them, panic rising. "What do you mean?" And that's when Clara's body tensed, as if she was preparing for a fight. "This was never just about Anna, or me. I'm the reason they both died." Gasping, Richard stumbled backward. The revelation sliced through him like glass. Before he could absorb the full impact, the crowd roared as police swarmed in, their voices slicing through panic. Clara's words lingered, heavy in the air. "They died because of me." Richard felt his heart drop. His whole world was unraveling. Clara wasn't just a beggar. She was a key to unearthing a buried truth, twisting the fabric of his life. The moment hung in the air, taut and electric. What if everything he knew was a lie? Clara's dark confession rewrote their story, threatening to consume them all. "Clara," he breathed, but her gaze was distant, fixated on the chaos swirling around them. And then, in a final shocking twist, Michael lowered his gun, but shouted, "I'm not done yet. The truth will come out." The streets filled with sirens, voices merging into a chilling crescendo. Richard stood frozen, the weight of Clara's past thickening the air. What had he just uncovered? What would it all mean? And as the world outside spun into chaos, one thought pierced through the onslaught. The real danger was still lurking, just beneath the surface, waiting to strike again. Richard stood frozen, confusion consuming him. Clara's words hung like a thick fog in the air. "I'm the reason they both died." His heart raced, every pulse of adrenaline making the chaos around him feel surreal. "Clara," he breathed, searching her eyes. Her expression morphed from fear to something darker, something hidden. Anna jumped closer, her voice quaking with urgency. "Richard, don't listen to her." The tension escalated, sirens blaring in the distance, the crowd a living organism of panic and whispers. "What are you talking about?" He yelled back at Anna, desperation creeping into his voice. "She could be your sister." But before he could grasp the enormity of Clara's confession, everything shattered like glass. A loud boom thundered from somewhere behind them, a sound so jarring it seemed to split the very air apart. "Run!" Michael shouted, his gun now lowered, but the desperation in his voice held a distinct edge. Richard instinctively pulled Clara closer, the weight of the moment pinning them down. Then it happened. A figure emerged from the smoke rising from the explosion. A woman, hair wild and eyes blazing with determination. Richard squinted, his heart stuttering. The world blurred as he registered who she was. It was Maya, Clara's longtime friend, a woman Richard had known from years past. "Maya?" Richard's voice faltered, confusion washing over him. "What are you doing here?" Maya's eyes darted between Richard, Clara, and Anna, weighing the chaos around them. "I came to warn you, Claire. They know about you." The words hit like a freight train. Everything shifted. Clara's body went rigid. The shadows in her eyes deepened, swirling with secrets. "They? Who? What do you mean?" Panic crept into Richard's throat. "They'll come for you all," Maya shouted, urgency twisting her features. "You can't be here." Suddenly, without warning, more shots rang out, sharp cracks that echoed in the night. Richard's breath caught, heart racing. The crowd erupted into screams, fleeing like leaves blown by a storm. "Clara!" he yelled again, fear slicing through him. But Clara's expression twisted from fear to a chilling calm. "Richard," she began, but her voice trailed off, lost in the chaos. Then, just as he turned to her, her face morphed, mask slipping to reveal something fierce. "I can't keep running." "What are you saying?" Richard's chest tightened. The woman he thought he knew burned with a sudden ferocity. Maya grabbed Clara's arm, urgency pinching her features. "You have to come with me. This is bigger than you know." A look passed between them, a connection masked by darkened minutes. Suddenly, Richard felt like a spectator in a play he never auditioned for. The pieces didn't fit. Nothing made sense. Then the earth shifted again. Amidst the chaos, police lights flashed, illuminating the remnants of the tumult. A shout rang out, "Get down!" Richard threw himself over Clara just as a hooded figure emerged from the shadows. Another gun drawn, aimed straight at them. In that split second, everything blurred. "Clara, no!" he screamed, but she was already moving, stepping forward. "I'm done hiding," she declared, defiance radiating from her. And in that moment, the realization slammed into him like a bullet. Clara wasn't just a lost soul on the streets. She was more than tangled lives and fate. She was a reckoning. "Clara, no!" But before he could finish, she turned, and the figure lowered their weapon. A chilling twist ripped through his gut. "Maya," she said, her voice trembling yet bold, "I know what I have to do." The world spun, and Richard stood at the epicenter of a storm he never saw coming. Secrets blended, lives intertwining in a way that threatened more than just the past. It threatened everything. And as the fire of the revelations burned bright, he couldn't help but think, what could possibly come next? Richard felt a surge of panic as Clara stepped forward, determination carved on her face. "I can't keep running." Her voice burst through the chaos, and he could see the storm brewing inside her. Just moments ago, they'd been surrounded by confusion, and now everything felt even more tangled. The shouting grew louder. Maya's frantic eyes darted across the street. Richard was rooted, torn between holding Clara back and wanting to understand her. "Clara, please don't do this," he urged, every word heavy with fear. But something in her gaze hardened. "They will find me, Richard. They've always found me." Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the ground. Richard's heart lurched as a fiery blast lit up the scene, casting eerie shadows along the street. The crowd surged forward, panic swallowing them whole. "Get down!" Maya screamed, crouching low. Richard pulled Clara to the ground, shielding her with his own body. Smoke enveloped them, acrid and thick. In the chaos, everything blurred. The sirens grew distant, eclipsed by the roar of confusion. But the shockwaves of the blast echoed in Richard's mind, sending adrenaline coursing through him. He felt Clara tremble beneath him, and it shook him to his core. "Look!" Maya pointed, her voice cutting through the haze. "There's someone else!" Through the smoke, a figure emerged, limping slightly. Richard squinted, trying to comprehend the blurred silhouette. Then it happened. His breath caught in his throat. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a familiar face. A face he thought he'd never see again. It was James, Clara's husband. "James?" Richard's voice cracked with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" But before James could respond, the intensity in his eyes swept Richard off his feet. Desperation flashed across James's face, layering the air with haunting tension. "I came to find you, Clara. I thought you were dead." "Dead?" Richard's mind raced as Clara's eyes widened, her face ghostly pale. "You two were married?" "We can't talk here," James interrupted, his voice raw with urgency. "They will track you down. We need to leave, now." Maya's hand clutched Richard's arm. "What do you mean? You're not safe." Suddenly the crowd surged again, caught in a whirlwind of panic and shouts. Richard felt completely lost. Clara's past kept unfolding like a grotesque tapestry. She'd been a beggar, a sister, a key to hidden secrets, now a wife. "I won't let you take her," Richard shouted, feeling righteous anger spark inside him. "Whatever you think you know." Clara broke free from his grip, her voice rising above the chaos. "James, I was trying to protect you. I didn't know. You have to understand." And before anyone could process what was happening, James pulled out a sleek object from his waistband, and Richard's heart stuttered in horror. "It's not just about you. They're coming for all of us." "No," Richard shouted, panic gripping him. Clara gasped, her expression morphing into something unrecognizable. Fear melding with something darker, something untamed. "You don't know what you're getting into, James. But I can't let you go back," he roared in desperation. And then everything fell silent. The silence was deafening. Richard felt every heartbeat echo in the void. Time hung suspended, and in that moment, a shocking realization struck him. James wasn't just a burnt-out soul from Clara's past. He was a part of it, a force in whatever twisted narrative had ensnared them all. And just as the crowd began to regain some semblance of control, as if the world itself were holding its breath, James turned and aimed the gun at Clara. "No!" Richard shouted, heart pounding. But James's eyes were wild, with something beyond rage. It was desperation, a fierce protectiveness like Richard had never seen. "I will do what it takes to protect you." Clara stood frozen, a storm raging behind her eyes. She looked at Richard one last time, a mixture of fear, sorrow, and something unnameable. Then came the deafening sound of gunfire, piercing the air like a shard of glass. Richard's world shattered around him. As the shot rang out, Clara's screams swallowed the night, followed by an overwhelming silence where everything felt impossibly heavy. Richard's heart plunged. What had just unfolded? Each second stretched into eternity. He stood in that frozen moment, fear clawing at his throat, confusion coiling tightly around him. What was the truth? What lay hidden in all this chaos? And who would emerge when the dust finally settled? Richard's heart dropped as the gunshot echoed in his ears, a sound like thunder shattering his world. Everything slowed. Clara's scream hung in the air, fragile as a glass ornament about to crash. He watched in horror as she staggered back, eyes wide, mouth agape. "Clara!" The word burst from him, desperate and raw. But time stretched. The chaos around them faded. He felt like he was trapped inside a bubble, unable to reach her. Blood blossomed on Clara's shirt, a vivid scarlet against the dirty fabric. "Clara! No!" He lunged forward, panic clawing at his throat. She crumpled to the ground, eyes glazed, and he felt like the air was being sucked out of his lungs. Maya dashed to her side, calling for help, her voice frantic. "Somebody! We need an ambulance!" The crowd around them shifted, murmurs of shock rippling through the masses. Richard dropped to his knees beside Clara, cradling her head. "Stay with me. You're going to be okay." His hands trembled, unsure where to press, how to stop the flow of crimson leaking from her body. "Richard," Clara gasped, struggling for breath. I didn't." "No, don't try to talk. Just hold on." Desperation twisted in his chest, a tight knot of fear and helplessness. The sirens drew near, mixing with the distant murmur of the bewildered crowd. But Clara's eyes darted toward James, who now stood frozen in shock, a blank expression on his face. "You have to know," she managed, her voice a whisper, fragile as a dying ember. "Know what? What are you talking about?" Richard pressed, afraid to lose any part of her, any piece of her truth. "They're coming for you, for all of us." Another cough, a ragged sound that shattered his heart. A shadow passed over them. From the fray of the crowd, a dark figure emerged, moving with imposing authority. Richard looked up just as the tall, muscular form stepped into view, revealing a grim smile that sent shivers down Richard's spine. "Well, well, well, what a mess we have here." The voice, smooth and dripping with malice, belonged to a figure he never thought he would see again. Marcus, a notorious mob boss known for his ruthless dealings. Marcus? The name escaped Richard's lips, a whisper of disbelief. "What are you doing here?" "Looks like your little game has gone awry, Richard." A cold laugh echoed around them. "But you should have seen this coming." "Why are you doing this?" Richard growled, standing to shield Clara from his looming presence. "Let her go!" But as Marcus stepped closer, his focus shifted. Suddenly, the crowd parted. Richard's heart thundered when he saw Anna emerging from the shadows, alive, breathless, and fraught with emotions. "Richard, get out of here! Now!" How is this possible?" Richard gasped, confusion hitting him like a freight train. But his terror turned to rage as he turned to Marcus. "What do you want with us? What have you done?" Directing the narrative to my liking, Marcus grinned wider. "Clara's secret was just the beginning, wasn't it, Clara?" He leaned closer, eyes flashing. "You thought you could hide forever? No. You're part of something much bigger." The realization struck Richard like a lightning bolt. Clara was supposed to be a victim. Now she felt like a pawn in a game that had spiraled out of control. "What does that mean?" Clara's face was pale, the light dimming in her eyes. "Richard, she choked. "I was involved in something terrible. I tried to protect you." "Protect me from what?" He felt dizzy, every word she spoke tearing the fabric of his understanding. Then it all crashed together. A betrayal so deep it felt like a knife right in his gut. Suddenly, a sharp scream pierced the air. "No!" Richard turned just in time to see James tackle Marcus, the two of them colliding in an explosion of chaos. They rolled on the ground, fighting for control. Fists flew, and the crowd erupted with shrieks of fear and surprise. Everything spiraled into a whirlwind of panic. Time jumped forward, and before Richard could comprehend what was happening, gunshots rang out again, piercing the chaos with that dreadful finality. Clara gasped, and Richard's heart seized again. He turned back to her, just as she whispered, "I wasn't just trying to protect you. I was trying to save myself." But the world around him was collapsing. As sirens blared and shadows danced across the pavement, he was left standing in a fog of confusion and horror. What truth had Clara hidden? What darkness was she forced to bear? And just as abruptly, everything shifted again. In one fateful instant, Richard realized he never truly knew who Clara was, or what they were all entwined in. The web of secrets began to unravel, leaving him clinging to the edge of a terrifying new reality. What would be next? He felt the ground beneath him quake with uncertainty, suspicion. Would anyone survive the truth that was about to come crashing down? Richard's world felt like it was collapsing around him. Clara's confession lingered, heavy and suffocating. "I was trying to save myself." The chaos roared, but her words cut through the noise, clenching his chest tighter. Each beat of his heart echoed the fear that gripped him. The ground beneath them shook as James grappled with Marcus. The scene now felt unreal, like a nightmare playing in slow motion. The color drained from Clara's face, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. "Richard," she whispered, and he could barely breathe. "It's my past." James seemed to strike Marcus hard, both men grunting as they struggled. It was a whirlwind of fists and fury. Richard wanted to help, wanted to join the chaos, but his focus was anchored on Clara. "Please stay with me," he urged, panic clawing at his throat. From the corner of his vision, he noticed Anna moving, her eyes darting with an urgency that spoke volumes. "You can't keep hiding. The truth always comes out," she shouted, fear mixing with determination. But Richard's attention was pulled back to the fight. It felt surreal, like the world had crumbled into fragments. Then it happened. Just as James gained the upper hand, a sharp crack filled the air. It wasn't a gunshot this time, but a deafening sound that made the earth tremble. A loud explosion breached the chaos, sending shards of glass and debris flying. People screamed, scattering in every direction. Richard instinctively threw himself over Clara, shielding her from the shockwave. The world exploded into noise and confusion. A roar filled the air as flames leaped from a nearby building, fierce and wild. "Get back!" Maya screamed, pulling Richard away from the debris. But in that moment, Clara gasped, a hand clutching her chest. "Clara!" he yelled, panic flooding his veins. Then he saw it, the figure emerging from the smoke, silhouetted against the fire. A woman stepped through, her long hair blowing wildly in the wind, her eyes fixed on Clara with an intensity that made Richard's heart stop. "Clara," the woman whispered, voice trembling. A chill washed over Richard. It was Destiny, Clara's long-estranged mother, a ghost from a past he believed was buried. "I've come to take you home." Shock rippled through Richard, the world around him fading. "What? No, you can't!" He felt like the ground was slipping beneath him. Clara's face drained of color, and for the first time, he saw something other than fear. It was dread. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice shaky. "I've protected you long enough." Destiny's tone shifted, fierce and unapologetic. "But now the truth must come out. They will find us both, and this is your chance." "What truth?" Richard demanded, stepping forward, heart hammering. "You can't just show up now." "Richard, please," Clara gasped, gripping his arm. "She's dangerous." The battle between James and Marcus had paused, both men turning to the unfolding spectacle. Around them, whispers emerged from the crowd, confusion thick in the air. "Who is she? What's happening?" "It's time to end this charade," Destiny declared, drawing closer. An unsettling energy pulsed around her. "Everything you've believed is a lie." Richard's stomach churned, his mind racing. Clara's past threatened to engulf them, the secrets too immense to comprehend. He glanced at Anna. Her wide eyes mirrored his uncertainty. "Clara, what is she talking about?" he asked, body tense. But before she could reply, the ground shook again. Another explosion rocked the street, sending everyone tumbling. Richard shielded Clara as the fiery debris rained down, creating chaos once more. Amidst the madness, bare truths began to unravel. It wasn't just Clara's secret. This was about all of them, drawn into a tangled web of lies, resilience, and hidden agendas. Time hung suspended, every heartbeat heavy with fear. Just as Richard opened his mouth to scream for Clara, the air crackled with tension, and then it hit. A sudden realization that made his heart falter. This was not just about survival. It was a reckoning, a gathering storm. The truth seemed set to tear them apart, revealing something much darker than any of them could have anticipated. Who were they really? What had they become? And as the embers of a time bomb reality whispered through the chaos, one thought loomed large: nothing would ever be the same. Richard's heart raced, each beat pounding a frantic rhythm in his chest. Clara was slipping away. Panic clawed at him as destiny stood there, her presence igniting confusion and fear. The flames danced around them, shadows flickering like ghosts of secrets long buried. "Clara, please stay with me," he urged, trying to lock onto her gaze. But she was drifting, slipping further as the smoke coiled around them. He could barely breathe, vision blurring as fear took root. James struggled with Marcus, their bodies colliding on the ground in a chaotic flurry. Richard could hardly focus, his world narrowed to Clara, to her gasping breaths. Then, suddenly, the explosion shook the earth again. Everyone staggered, fear transforming into pure chaos. "Peep down," Maya yelled, her voice cutting through the frenzy. People screamed and fled in every direction, but Richard couldn't move. Not while Clara lay there, vulnerable and on the edge. And then the air shifted again. It was like the world paused, a deep inhale before a violent exhale. Clara's eyes locked onto his, suddenly clear and fierce. "You need to know, Richard, about my past." But just as she was about to reveal it, the shadows seemed to thicken. Destiny stepped closer, reaching out, as if trying to draw Clara back into the darkness she came from. "You don't have to do this, Clara," she said, her voice smooth, yet tinged with desperation. "Step away from her," Richard shouted, rising to his feet, heart pounding in his ears. The crowd was unsteady, confusion looming heavy over them. But just then, a whistle sliced the air, sharp and lethal. Richard's stomach dropped as he turned just in time to see the flash of a darting figure, a hooded silhouette running through the chaos. "Look out!" someone shouted. With lightning speed, the figure was upon Destiny, a glimmering blade crossing the line between danger and family. In one quick, brutal motion, they thrust the knife directly into her side, pulling Clara's mother into an embrace that split the air with horror. "No!" Clara wailed, an anguish cry that pierced Richard's heart. Destiny's eyes widened, shock and betrayal flashing like wildfire. The crowd gasped, a collective breath of disbelief echoing through the streets. Destiny staggered, blood spilling from the wound, painting the pavement crimson. The mysterious assailants stepped back, revealing themselves as a woman. A familiar face, yet one Richard never thought he'd see here, wrapped up in this chaos. "Rachel?" he barely managed, confusion crashing over him like a wave. Clara's sister, the one he thought lost, living miles away. "Clara, it's time to end this," Rachel shouted, her voice defined by fury and desperation. "You can't keep letting her control you." With those words, the air thickened, reality arraying itself in a shocking new light. Everything he thought he knew splintered into shards of confusion. Clara's eyes flashed with something deep: anger, hesitation, revelation. "Rachel, what are you doing?" Clara gasped, choking on horror. "You're supposed to be gone. How did you find me?" "Because I always will, sister," Rachel shouted defiantly, stepping closer. "You buried the truth, but we need to face it together." And just like that, Richard's world turned upside down. He had thought he understood Clara's past, her pain, her struggle. But now it cracked open, spilling out secrets, he never even knew existed. Clara wasn't just tangled in a web of lies. She was fighting a battle against her own blood. The chaos swirled around them, screams and shouts drowning out his thoughts. The system of safety he'd tried to hold on to fragmented, leaving him wavering on the edge of an abyss of uncertainty. As he looked at Clara, blood tracing her features while love and fear coalesced, a wave of dread washed over him. Everything he believed about her. Maybe it was a lie. What other secrets lingered in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike? The air hung heavy with uncertainty as Rachel's blade glinted under flickering lights. Richard stood entrenched in a volatile storm of emotions. He could feel it in his bones. Nothing would ever be the same again. Richard's heart raced, each beat pounding a frantic rhythm in his chest. Clara slipped further away, her voice trembling as she tried to speak. "I was trying to save myself." Panic clawed at him, fear tightening around his throat. The heat from the flames pressed against them, but all he could focus on was Clara. But then everything shattered. The crowd gasped in unison, eyes wide as Rachel stood there, blade in hand, breathing heavy. Richard could barely comprehend what this all meant. Clara wasn't just a lost soul. She was tangled in a web of betrayal and blood. "Rachel, why did you come here?" Clara's voice wavered, the fear palpable. "You know why," she snapped, her eyes glinting with something fierce. "You've been running. It's time to face the truth." Richard watched in shock, time stretching, as James and Marcus struggled in the background, fists flying. And then Destiny, Clara's mother, was hit, staggering back, eyes wide with betrayal. Blood spilled, a vivid crimson that painted the chaos around them. "Clara," Destiny rasped, a hand clutching her side. "You can't run. You need to confront it." And as she fell, the world felt like it was collapsing further. Richard dropped to Clara's side, desperation clawing at him. "Stay with me. Don't you dare close your eyes." But Clara could hardly respond, her breaths shallow. Fear pierced Richard's heart like a blade. He looked to Rachel for answers, questions swirling like a storm. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, trembling. She met his gaze, but the intensity was suffocating. "Because it's the only way she'll be free." Then suddenly, the ground shook violently. Another explosion rocked the street. Richard shielded Clara with his body as debris rained down. The chaos intensified. Screams erupted. Panic engulfed the crowd. Everything blurred in an overwhelming rush. "Get to safety," Maya yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. Silently, Richard wished for the nightmare to end. But then, just as he thought things couldn't get worse, a new sound cut through the air, a whirring, like a helicopter approaching. "Look!" someone shouted, pointing skyward. That's when the lights descended upon them, illuminating the battleground below. Military vehicles rolled down the street, sirens blaring, as troops began to disembark. What was happening? Was this all just a play? "No, it can't be," James shouted, scrambling. But for Richard, it was as if the world tilted at an alarming angle. "That's not the half of it," a new voice erupted through the din, startling Richard to his core. It was a tall figure emerging from behind the military, clad in formal attire, face stern yet entirely familiar. "Roger?" Richard gasped, the name hanging heavily in the air. It was an old mentor, a figure he had trusted. "Richard, we need Clara." Roger shouted, the urgency in his voice sending chills down Richard's spine. "She's the key to everything." "What are you talking about?" Richard barked back, confusion lacing his tone. "Clara isn't just a victim," Roger pressed, his dark eyes zeroing in on Clara, now struggling to stay conscious. "She's part of a much larger puzzle. You have no idea what's been hidden." The ground felt like quicksand beneath Richard's feet. A wave of disbelief crashed over him. What did that even mean? Tell me the truth, Clara managed to gasp, her eyes darting between all of them. Roger hesitated, the weight of his own secrets weighing him down. You have no idea, but your life isn't just a simple story of loss. There's a reason. But before he could finish, a sudden flash erupted over them, blinding everyone. The explosion erupted like a demon unleashed, heat and light thrown brutally into the air. Richard squinted against the glare, heart hammering. When the darkness cleared, a figure stood there, clad in black, a distorted face hidden beneath a hood. "Let the truth be revealed," the figure declared, the voice unnervingly familiar. And the moment hung there, suspended in time. Richard's heart dropped as realization crashed down upon him. This was about to change everything. What if everything he knew was all a lie? Clara's eyes widened in horror. Rachel stepped back, and James clenched his fists. The tension was palpable, limbs frozen in uncertainty. "Who are you?" Richard whispered, a tremor in his voice. The answer felt poised on the edge of calamity, threatening to unearth a truth that could shatter them all. And as the crowd held its breath, Richard knew one thing for sure. Their lives were never going to be the same again. Richard felt the ground beneath him tremble as the hooded figure stepped forward, shadows curling around her like an embrace. Clara's breath came in shallow gasps, and in that moment, everything hung in the balance. "Who are you?" Richard's voice was raw, laced with fury. "What do you want with Clara?" The figure removed the hood, revealing a face that should have been familiar, yet felt foreign. It was Olivia, a name from the depths of Richard's past, their bond severed by time and secrets. "I've come to reveal the truth." Her voice dripped with urgency. "Why now? Why here?" Clara croaked, her eyes darting, desperate for answers. "Because it's time." Olivia stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "You, Clara, are at the center of everything. The very foundation of deception rests on your shoulders." Chaos swirled around them. A cacophony of gasps and murmurs erupted from the crowd, shadows of disbelief painting their faces. Richard tightened his grip on Clara's hand, feeling her life force slipping away. "Stay with me," he whispered, trying to anchor her. Just then the sirens grew louder, a piercing wail cutting through the fear. It was as if the world itself held its breath. Every heartbeat synchronized with the tension. The crowd shifted, their expressions flickering between fear and confusion. James struggled to get up, slowly staggering to his feet, shock radiating off him as he looked at Olivia. "What do you mean, the center of everything?" A wave of silence washed over them, broken only by a distant echo of metal clinking. Military approaching, marching through the smoke. Clara's eyes sparkled with defiance, but her voice trembled. "Just tell me, was this all my fault?" "Not your fault," Olivia replied. Desperation lined in her tone, but intertwined in something bigger than any of us. "Clara, you're connected to secrets that could destroy lives." "God, what did they do to you?" Richard whispered, heart racing with a mix of dread and compassion. What truth lay behind this unraveling tapestry? Before Olivia could respond, the building behind them erupted in flames, sending embers soaring into the night sky. Richard felt the heat on his face, his instincts kicking in. "We need to move." He pulled Clara closer, but she was fading. The world blurred, and every ounce of his being ached for clarity. Lights from the military vehicles flashed, illuminating the scene, casting eerie shadows over everyone gathered. Richard could feel the crowd's anxiety morphing into something palpable, like static. Another explosion rocked the distant street, and the chaotic din grew louder. "Get out!" Maya shouted, a fierce urgency in her voice. "Now, there's no time." "Richard, please!" Clara's eyes locked onto his, fear mingled with something else, trust. "You must know, they will keep coming." Not while I'm here, he pledged, desperation hardening his resolve. I won't let them take you again. With a last gaze between Clara and Olivia, a strange connection woven by family, time, and pain, thickening the air around them, Richard shouted, "We're leaving. We'll face it together." As they turned to flee, the ground trembled again underfoot, the chaos vibrating through every nerve. But Richard pressed on, pulling Clara close, moving into the storm swirling around them, determined to reach safety. And just like that, as they raced toward the flickering lights of the military, Clara grasped Richard's hand, whispering a promise. "I'll fight. We'll break free together." But beneath that promise lay an abyss of uncertainties, shadows lingering in the corners of their minds. The truth wasn't just a stone to be thrown. It was a war waiting to ignite. As they fled into the gathering dusk, the tangled threads of their lives began to weave anew, a journey unearthing the scars they must face. Before they vanished into the night, Richard felt something shift within him, a pulse of hope fighting with the dread. What lay ahead could break them or finally set them free. This is where the story concludes, but don't let it end here. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next adventure, the next twist. Smash that like button now to boost the algorithm and help the story reach more fans like you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. It truly matters. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know this conclusion. Don't wait 1 second more to says.